I think it was the need to see me reflected on the media. I probably you will notice very soon that I'm not a native English speaker. I was raised in Colombia and moved to New York like 20 years ago, and I eventually met other like Latinos who were born here in the U.S. or like overseas, but we all shared this idea that we were not represented on the media, that basically like everything that we found on the media was not complete, no? And myself, I was all the time consuming media in English because the quality of the journalism that I'm interested in was not available in Spanish at the time. So I was a real fan of public media, NPR shows that I discovered when I moved to New York. And I remember the first time I listened to This American Life, this public media show, and I was like, what's this? This is super long. This never ends. And I was super engaged right away. And then I discovered what it was. And then years later, I met Daniel Alarcón. He's a Peruvian-American novelist, and we kept talking about shows in public media, and he had this idea of like, oh, why don't we do this show that is like basically like This American Life but in Spanish, but it was kind of like bringing those stories that were underreported by media here, just to broaden the conversation about Latin American Latinos in the U.S. No, it was everything that we found was about immigration of the other villain, or no, but we knew that the format that we wanted to use on this audio journalism project was format like this personal format. Like we wanted to give the space to the characters to tell their own stories. So we knew that the power of like that format is only works on the native language. So we decided to do it in Spanish. I think there was nothing like Radio Ambulante when we launched the project 6 years ago in 2012. There's nothing like Radio Ambulante. We tell stories from from everywhere where Spanish spoken actually, and this is more like we celebrate a language, a common language to tell those stories, and there are 400 million like people who can speak Spanish, more than 50 million in the U.S. So I think mostly this format was available in English, or has been always available in English, but not in Spanish. And I think that's one thing that we feel a need very quick. Still, we're a digital-only project. We are a podcast. And so one of the challenges has been the discovery problem that many podcasts have. I think now we see that the opportunity is there for us because the market in the US is a bit saturated with English language podcasts a podcast is created every day, or like 100 of them. Instead, there are not many podcasts in Spanish. I think now we can tell that because we launched the project just before the success of Serial, the podcast Serial, that put podcasts in the radar of everyone. I think that helped us a lot. The other thing that worked for us, so at the beginning, people were asking, oh, wait, this is great. Why don't you do it in English? And we were, well, because we know that those stories has to be told in Spanish, and also, like, there are listeners for them. So people were skeptic, and it was hard to gain the visibility that we think the project deserved. So we created partnerships with shows that we admire, like This American Life, Radio Lab, Planet Money, and other shows, Snap Judgment, and so that were like shows from the public media that we really were following, and people started like discovering us. But it took a little while. Many people still ask, why don't you do it in English instead of, like, I mean, 6 years later, we are still asked, why not in English? And I think, but we do content in English. And sometimes, I mean, our sometimes we partner with other shows and we talk about our stories in Spanish, in English, so we can like reach a broader audience of non-Spanish speakers. But still, I think like the outlet media are not still investing enough on creating bilingual content, and specifically Spanish language content. One thing that is important that I keep telling, which is a bit strong, but is a strong statement, is that the reason, like, if you can't understand the language, it doesn't mean that we as an audience don't exist, right? Like, we really are real. Like, Radio Ambulante grew last year 89% in listenership, and it has been always growing. So I think it's the obstacle is how to navigate that that universe of like opening spaces for producing more bilingual content. We hope to see more shows like Radio Ambulante created. The other challenge is monetization. Somehow Latinos are like a big, they are in the radar of every sponsor or like every company in the US, but for the podcast, we still struggle a bit with that. And that we have to create like a very special case. And I think we have to do double efforts to convince people that you need to invest, you need to like support and all that. But on the side of the listenership, I think we're very grateful that our listeners are there. They bring more people, like more listeners. They love what we do. They donate. So that part works very well. We're thinking about syndicating the content in Latin America. We have also like a big listenership there. So the split of our audience is 70% of our listeners for the Spanish language podcast are based in the US. Like 28 are in Latin America. But the format there, the podcast is not very popular yet. So we get a lot of requests to syndicate the content in radio stations. So probably there will be the space to grow. One thing is that when I'm in the US and I say, oh, this is like This American Life in Spanish, but transnational, people just get it, right? Like, but when you go to Latin America, this format doesn't exist. So we have to explain a lot. No, this is like long form, print, and most of the collaborations that we do with journalists in Latin America are with print journalists. So it's a bit of a switch, and because they haven't been able to listen to this format much because there is no content in Spanish on this on long form audio journalism. We started to create this space to share tools in Spanish so people can like have a starting point. And the reason why we do that is because when we created Radio Ambulante, we thought it was a great idea, but we didn't know anything about radio. So then we were, okay, now we have to learn. And we found this website called transom.org that has like many tools. And we learned with those, it's a blog basically, that they do a great work, and we learn with those resources. Those resources are in English. Now NPR has created recently this section that is NPR training, and we're also partnering with them to translate some of those articles and make them available for Spanish speakers. The other thing that I think is valuable about the partnership that we have with NPR is that we're bringing these new voices, Latino and Latin American voices to the airwaves, and I think being able to be part of NPR is important for those journalists, that they will never get the visibility because the spaces for Latino journalists are like very limited on these bigger or media outlets. So. We know that many Spanish language teachers are using Radio Ambulante in their classroom. So we have a Spanish language teacher from on the college level helping us, and we have been doing a lot of research on this segment because 70% of the listeners are in the US, but at least 1/3 of them identify themselves as non-Latinos or non-native Spanish speakers. And what we have is a lot of Spanish learners and also like heritage students. But mostly those Spanish learners, when we learned that, we were like, oh, but who are all those people? Because it was not just a few. And also we have received many emails and communications from Spanish language teachers who are like, oh, we love what you do, because they love the accents and also the thematics, because are character driven. So it's good to engage students in conversations that are real. And so we're working more with those teachers to create resources so they can share curriculum and other kind of resources. And we are also like now working on designing an app for that segment that will help them train their ear and follow the stories better. Radio Ambulante has been a project that is underfunded. Like getting funding has been a real challenge. And so what we can do is that we release these episodes, and then we release on our website translations and transcriptions. But that's not a great user experience. So we're now trying to work on this. We are actually on beta testing now on this app. Those are like many things, many challenges. As my accent. So just going to do business sometimes is like has been at the beginning was more intimidating, because like mostly many people are open to that, but because I came to New York when I moved 20 years ago, so finding different accents is something like that is very common. But so in other parts of the United States is not as common. So I think I had like always to like make sure that I could rise up and keep it cool when I received any comment that was related to my accent or my heritage or something like that. I think that has worked. Also, like because I don't sugarcoat things in general, and also like my politeness is not. I don't know the codes very well 20 years later after living here. So that's one thing that I think I have worked on a lot. And being a media, being a woman CEO, also like the host of the show of Radio Ambulante, Daniel Larcon, who happens also to be my husband, is a very celebrated novelist. So obviously, like, he's the one who gets all the invitations, he's the one who gets all the attentions, which is perfectly fine, because I'm also like very shy here. Like, like I don't need that attention. But when we go to talk to people, it seems that at some point we are so busy that he can't do that anymore. I am the person who represents the project. I am the person who brings the money. I am the person who can sell better this project. And I have to make clear to people that this is how it is. Daniel is very happy to let me do that, because he doesn't want to do that. He just wants to concentrate on the narrative part of the project. So I haven't like dealt with a lot of like because I work by myself. I don't see a lot of discrimination or but I know that one thing is that there is this expected idea. There is a lot of pressure, like as a Latino and representing a Latino project and my team, is that we are reliable. We are always on time. We say that we're gonna do it and we do it, and we feel that we don't drop the ball, or we try not dropping the ball, because we feel that we are representing a community, like holding a door for a whole community, and if we just like let people think that we're folkloric or like always late, or that dress in white and wear flowers and are barefoot, like these stereotypes, that's wrong. So we try just to make sure that we work professionally and that and this is kind of the value of the organization. And this is a challenge, and we're proud. I'm proud that my team they're better than me, that we are like that. But that also puts a lot of pressure, because it's like a double pressure to try to. Sometimes people say, "Oh, an episode good is good enough," and for us, it's like no, it has to be excellent. So it's always trying to make sure that people understand they have an excellent podcast an excellent journalism. It happens to be in Spanish. I'm not sure. I don't know. I hope that Radio Ambulante at some point can live without me, and vice versa. There are many spaces to grow. To grow the project. In my interests are like more. I need to constantly be being like innovating and throwing new projects and ideas. But the content of Radio Ambulante is very crafty to create. No, we require each episode at the end is like the result is like between 22 and minutes and 1 hour. It's a weekly episode and it's very it takes months to be produced. So it's hard to everything that is disruptive for the workflow for my editorial team that includes like 10 people is they don't want to move much. They want to experiment with the format, but they focus on like producing extraordinary and sophisticated audio journalism with a lot of rigor and all that. But for me, is I can't just keep like doing the same thing all the time. So if I just try to create other projects. So now I'm working on developing these products, giving added value to our content in Spanish, like the app, and trying to see if we can bring extra revenue from that. I think that will work. I hope. And then also because this so many people like Radio Ambulante and they don't know how to do this, I'm working also on this educational component to try to be available for other Latinas and for other entrepreneurs in Latin America to make sure that I can transfer things that I have learned. Mostly things that they shouldn't be doing. I think finding good advice was not easy at the beginning, and I want to make sure that if I can help people to save some time and money, or like learning something or exchange ideas, because I see it more as an exchange. I hope I can continue doing that. So I'm coaching 2 women journalists every week pro bono as part of an initiative with Pointer Institute, and I'm going to start working with more as an exchange program with other entrepreneurs in Latin America. The same, probably another 2 hours per week on a very busy week.